From The Times and The Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Luke Jones. This week, Magaland touched down in the Cotswolds.
It is great to be here again. My wife and I love this area of the UK. We actually were here a couple of years ago.
American Vice President JD Vance and his family are visiting for their summer break and mixing business with pleasure.
We've gone fishing in the lake outside, and unfortunately, the one strain on the special relationship is that all of my kids caught a fish, but the foreign secretary did not. I'm sorry.
He's fished with our foreign secretary, had drinks with Tories, barbecued with some interesting folk from the new political right, and had breakfast with Nigel Farage. What does this tell us about who the odds-on favourite to succeed Donald Trump is backing here? And is it a boost for the special relationship that he's not sunning himself in the Maldives or Tuscany, but veg shopping near Chipping Norton? The story today: JD Vance's manoeuvres in the Cotswolds.
My name is Josh Glancy. I am the Associate Editor of The Sunday Times.
Have you ever been to Dean before?
I was trying to think about that recently. I'm not sure I have. I have pottered about the Cotswolds in my misspent youth. I've been to Charlbury. I think I've been to Wilderness Festival a few times. I think I've been to Burford. I don't think I've been to Dean, but...
I've driven through Dean.
Right.
Whilst around Chipping Norton, and remembered that David Cameron lived somewhere near there. So I thought, well, let's just do a quick drive to see if we can spot him.
And did you?
No.
Okay.
But pleasant. And
yeah,
I'm sure I love it this
it's
time
a
of
gorgeous
year.
part of the world.
Why is JD Vance there, would you say?
Superficially, you can just look at it. It's a really nice place to go on holiday.
Yeah.
He's got 3 young kids. It gets him out of Washington and the kind of media bubble that he lives in wherever he is in America, and the partisanship of America. And Americans love the Cotswolds, don't they? They find it cute. They find it British.
And it's bang on trend at the moment.
It is. There's lots of rich Americans there. I mean, Ellen DeGeneres went there, although partly to flee Trump. So she's probably not thrilled that Vance has turned up. But you know, there are lots of rich Americans, hedge funders, finance guys who have second homes in the Cotswolds. You see the sort of thrum of helicopters going overhead between London and that part of Oxfordshire. So it's a popular place. On the other hand, there is obviously a diplomatic angle to this. Great events of state are afoot in terms of Britain, Europe, America, Russia, what happens with Ukraine. And Vance is very interested in Britain. I think this is something that people have slightly misunderstood about him. He talks a pretty tough game to Europe and to Britain, but it doesn't come from a place of hatred or antipathy, or at least it's more the role of a critical friend. You know, he's spoken about his ancestral heritage on these islands, Scots-Irish, possibly also English. You know, he is an Anglo-Saxon, I suppose you might say, and so and he cares about these things. So there's lots of reasons to come to the Cotswolds.
And we'll delve into that in a moment. But first, a word about Mift in Dean and all these people that have suffered the arrival of the vice president. It's been very English, maybe not in the way that Americans are expecting.
Yes, it's JD Vance's introduction to NIMBYism. Yeah, I mean, look, inevitably, you chuck a vice presidential motorcade into a nice English country village and people get cross.
Whose streets? Our streets! Whose streets?
Roads have been blocked. Police are sort of everywhere. Chipping Norton, you rarely even see one police car, but we're seeing vans, we're seeing loads just dotting past. And it's all for this man who slags off our country, in one breath and then wants to holiday here 6 months later. I think it's just hypocrisy.
There were reports that they parked the disabled bays at Dalesfords.
Well, quite. We like our rules. We have our etiquette. JD Vance has obviously driven a motorcade through all of that. People will be cross, but I suspect they'll all get over it.
Yes. Before we get into exactly who Vance has been meeting on this trip, let's just delve a bit more into his relationship with the UK that you explained there, because he hasn't been very kind about our country of late, but it comes from a place of love and affection.
I do think it's true, and I take that from Vance himself, who I've met over the years, but also from people around him who I've spoken to more recently. He's quite openly sees himself as someone who cares about what he would call Western civilization, about European civilization, about Christian society. And he knows that Europe, Britain is the source of that society and of that civilization. This all sounds a bit old-fashioned, but that is how Vance sees the world. His family are sort of Appalachian hillbilly families. They all came over from the British Isles a couple of hundred years ago, and that's his ancestry. Yes, he's been quite rude about Britain and Europe. There was a very unfortunate comment where he talked about random countries that, with tiny armies, which appeared to be referring to France and Britain, although his team vehemently deny that. The speeches he gave to the Munich Security Conference, where he really just kind of gave Europe and Britain a shellacking for their complacency, for basically committing civilizational suicide.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America.
He said that the UK is the first truly Islamist country that will get a nuclear weapon.
I was talking about, what is the first truly Islamist country that will get a nuclear weapon? And we were like, maybe it's Iran, maybe Pakistan already kind of counts. And then we sort of finally decided maybe it's actually the UK, since Labour just took over.
Yeah, I mean, that was a crude joke, but it comes from this same point, which is he thinks they're committing civilizational suicide by having effectively open borders, by allowing millions of people from different cultures into their countries, by allowing woke to flourish in their institutions. We have regulation and red tape, and we don't produce AI unicorns. He thinks Europe is stuck in the past. And as a critical friend, his view is, well, it needs a kick up the bum, basically. I think his view and the view of his friends is that if Britain spends properly on defence, if it looks after its borders properly, if it grows up as a proper country again and stands tall in the world, it will have no greater friend than America and no greater friend than JD Vance. That is how they put it.
He's been meeting with some interesting people while he's been here. Let's go through the sort of maybe slightly obvious ones first of all. His first stop was Chevening, the enormous stately home of that the UK Foreign Secretary can make use of, which I've also driven past. I think on that same trip I made a diversion to Chevening. Very nice it is, as expected. But him and Lammy do get on, even though their politics aren't necessarily exactly aligned.
They do, and I think Lammy sees this as a genuine diplomatic achievement, is that he is close to the Vice President personally, which is quite unusual for a Foreign Secretary. We heard all about it in a press conference they held in the drawing room at Chevening.
Yeah, good to see you too. Thank you. It's a hell of a room, David. Not bad. Look at this, beautiful.
Let's put that down.
Yep. Okay.
We're going to sit down and then...
And they are friends.
David, I guess when you were in opposition, right, and I had just gotten elected to the United States Senate, obviously we come from sort of different political spectrums, but he was kind enough to make time on a visit to D.C. We got to know each other a little bit then.
They are both people of faith. They're both from broken homes, grew up without, strong father figures. They've both seen what drugs and poverty can do to communities. They both kind of pulled themselves out of that and found political success, and they bonded over that.
Our families enjoy each other's company very much, which always helps, but we care about this relationship, and we care about the fact that though we're separated by an ocean, and I guess as Churchill said, by a common language, that we have a lot in common, and there's a lot to do and a lot to work on together.
I can sort of reveal a few of the things they were doing there which haven't been made public. So, they had a private mass, and Vance made cinnamon buns for the families while they were there. They had a barbecue in the evening. But they also had some serious political chat. Obviously, they spoke about Ukraine and the Middle East. But they also talked about AI quite a lot and what they think it's going to be able to do within a couple of years. So there was a mixture of kind of scones for the kids, croquet on the lawn type stuff, and then serious big geopolitical chat.
David once said to me, this is probably a couple of years ago, that there's this feeling that the world is in a state of incredible tension. But there's a lot that the United Kingdom and the United States can do, I think, to bring greater peace and greater stability to the world. And so we share that conviction, and that's made it easy for us to spend time together and work on the issues of the day.
They obviously went fishing, which was splashed all over the papers. We've now discovered that they didn't have, or certainly Lammy didn't have. I'd be amazed if Vance had a correct fishing license from the Environment Agency. So Lammy has he's referred himself to the Environment Agency. The fine is up to £2,500.
Oh.
I suspect we won't be fining Mr. Vice President.
But on the matters of state, and particularly the sort of the two main conflicts concerning at the moment, Ukraine and Gaza, I mean, quite a bit of distance between the two of them, particularly on Gaza. We had that press conference, of course, it was the day that the UK announced it was going to recognise Palestinian statehood if Israel didn't meet certain terms come the autumn. And Vance clearly disagreed with that.
He did, and he's been quite explicit. America won't be following the same path as Britain and France. But, you know, they've talked about all this behind the scenes. Everyone knows where everyone else is. I don't think it's a massive diplomatic breach there.
That's the government. On the Tory side of the ledger, obviously massive smattering of those. Robert Jenrick was one of them, Shadow Justice Secretary, and maybe would-be leader of the opposition, Pretender. And he didn't meet Kemi Badenoch. Should we read much into that?
I don't think we should read masses into it. I think there genuinely was a bit of a scheduling difficulty. Kemi has said, you know, it's his summer holiday. I had also events. We tried to get on the same page. We didn't. They've been texting, I'm told, recently. They're going to speak while he's here. They are friendly. You know, I think they come from a very similar place on the culture wars, and I think they have got on in the past. I think what we can read into it is that clearly he's acknowledging that Jenrick is a player, and, you know, he should meet him too. And I think that also there's possibly something in Badenoch slightly distancing herself from Trump. She thinks that Farage and Starmer have both slightly sort of embarrassed themselves with how, you know, scrambling over each other to sit at the feet of King Donald. And Trump isn't that popular in this country. And I think she sees maybe a little bit of political advantage in a bit of distancing there. Maybe she didn't make it her absolute top priority. But it's the other politicians, I think, that are really interesting that he met. So there was a barbecue, and there was a potentially quite momentous breakfast as well.
Josh, talking about JD Vance, the US Vice President, who's been in the UK, in the Cotswolds, amongst other places. And one of the people he met was Nigel Farage, of course, great pal of Trump and co. What do we know about their relationship, Farage and Vance?
I think they get on. I don't think they're as close as Trump and Farage, but I think that Vance realises that reform is a big force in this country. I think they see it as analogous to MAGA and shares a lot of values and goals. He was reported in this paper, actually, of asking Peter Mandelson, the ambassador in Washington, about reform. Mandelson was like, well, you know, they're sort of doing well, but, you know, long way to go and all that.
Didn't he refer to them as sort of being populist and, you know, people, want to pick a party that will actually be able to govern and not just some sort of protest vote, which sort of goes against the Trump phenomenon.
It does, but, you know, we're a different country. But that is Labour's hope, actually, that when push comes to shove, reform will fade away. So, yeah, he's obviously interested in reform and acknowledges that Farage is in many ways the key player in British politics right now.
And will that kind of patronage, Vance, Trump or anything, actually affect reform or its chances here, do you think? I mean, I know there was talk about Elon Musk at some point actually putting hard cash into the party, but just warm words and some kind of a relationship, that's not really going to swing it here.
I think it's probably helpful for showing that reform likes to be taken seriously, and Farage likes to be taken seriously. And if you're trying to woo donors, possibly in America, but also possibly here, show them you matter, well, then a meeting, you know, with a one-on-one with breakfast with JD Vance is a pretty good way to illustrate that. So I think it's important for their sense of prestige. I don't think it'll sway many voters.
So we had Farage for breakfast, and then quite an interesting smorgasbord of people on the right at this barbecue he assembled, spanning a former contestant on The Apprentice and a professor at Cambridge.
Yeah, so JD Vance threw this barbecue at this rather smart Cotswolds house that he's been renting, and there were several interesting figures there. Three of them include the Cambridge academic and theologian James Orr, the Tory MP Danny Kruger and the former Apprentice contestant, and I suppose you'd call him an internet personality, Thomas Skinner. James Orr and Danny Kruger are both quite socially conservative, thoughtful, intellectual figures. Kruger's an MP and writes books and worries about the fraying of the social fabric in Britain. Orr is an interesting character. He's very close to Vance personally. I think he's close to Peter Thiel as well, Vance's backer and patron in Silicon Valley. He's at Cambridge, but he's quite a coming force in sort of right-wing intellectual circles in this country. There was also this other character there, Thomas Skinner, who, if like me, you spend too much time on X.
I was about to say, I know him from TikTok, but yes.
He's the Bosch man.
Yeah.
Drink Stella, having a beer with Jezza. Bosh.
So he's this slightly larger-than-life performance figure who plays the role of the kind of cheeky chappy, Jack the Lad, dad who loves 7 pints on a Sunday afternoon in a pub garden with his wife and kids. There's nothing better. Bosh. That's Thomas Skinner.
Happy Sunday, you lovely people. And you know it's my favourite day of the week. And look what I'm going to do. A lovely Sunday roast dinner. And look at that sirloin of beef from my local butcher. UK beef as well. Different class.
He's sort of become a bit of a figurehead for the new right in this country. He's talking about something's wrong in Britain and things have gone down a bad path and, we're losing our sense of who we are and I love this country and I want to rescue it. And I think that chimes a lot with Vance. And he tweeted a picture of him, quite a funny picture of him in a suit, in a tie, sort of putting his arm around Vance. Both had their thumbs up. Vance looked slightly awkward in it, but was sort of humouring the whole thing. And Thomas Skinner looked thrilled to be there. So.
And tell us about James Orr, one of this trio. Who exactly is he?
James Orr's an interesting character. He's a theologian in the divinity schools at Cambridge. I think he's a professor of philosophy of religion, to be precise. And he met Vance, I think in around 2019. They were introduced by a friend. So before Vance even joined the Senate, was much more accessible at the time. I think even I had his number then. But they became friends. And Orr's a rising force, really, on the British right. He's a policy chief for Reform, so he's contributing some of their policies. And he's trying to apply some of Vance's thinking in this country. So he's very much a kind of bridge to Vance and a bridge to the intellectual coterie around Vance, I think.
And you get the sense that trio maybe is where Vance, were he living and voting here in the UK, would be settled.
Exactly.
Not with, actually, to be fair, your Kemi Badenochs or your Robert Jenricks.
Possibly that's right. I mean, I think his political affinity for those two is real as well. But I think you're right that Vance likes having thinkers around him. He likes having intellectuals. He likes to be connected to the world of ideas and to inform his politics with thought and political philosophy. So I think Kruger and Orr represent quite classic kind of Vance friends and figures. Skinner is obviously a bit more sui generis, but he's sort of like the English equivalent of one of these kind of crackpot kind of MAGA characters. He's just like quite funny and has that magic dust on social, which they recognise as very important.
Yes, and maybe he'd want a bit more of. But my sort of point is that Vance, if he lived here, would be a Reform voter, not a Conservative voter. Would you agree?
I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's right, because it's the populist insurgency, because the Conservative Party still has its roots in the old elite of this country and the landed elite of this country, and I think he would see it as probably a slightly too tired a vehicle for the kind of radical change that's required. Whereas Reform, obviously question marks remain. They're small. It's a bit of a one-man band at times, but I think he sees the energy of Reform and the kind of slightly revolutionary zeal that's more in tune with his feelings, yeah.
And Vance, at the end of this, was on holiday. He could have been on the Costa del Sol. He could have been hiking in the Dolomites. But he was here, meeting these people, doing the rounds in a sort of still on the clock way. Do you think all of this is laying the groundwork for some kind of political future as US president, running for it?
Well, it's an interesting question, is it? I mean, you can't interpret anything someone like JD Vance does without some layer of political intent. So, yes, obviously, he wants to be the next president. I don't think he would even deny that anymore, but he obviously needs to navigate around Donald Trump at some point. And, it's important to have a relationship with Britain and have deep relationships here with power players. He's much more prominent and influential, particularly in world affairs, than a lot of previous vice presidents. So I think he likes the idea of wielding his own power, having his own connections, being his own force in the world. And Trump's reasonably happy for him to get on with that. So I think it's clearly not just a potter around the Cotswolds for the kids. There's something else going on, clearly.
And surely this is an enormous opportunity for us, UK PLC, because not only have you got Donald Trump, somebody who loves Scotland, has a connection with the UK, you've got the vice president choosing to holiday here and spending his time meeting all of these people from our political classes. This is an enormous opportunity, isn't it?
Yes, I was amused to read in the FT recently that it was actually George Osborne who arranged a lot of this holiday, who's personally friends with Vance.
As like a sort of Thomas Cook stand-in?
Well, I suppose a slightly upmarket version of, yeah. He roped in David Cameron as well to make some recommendations. So he got the sort of real...
Oh, brings us back, of course, Dean, yeah.
Yeah, quite. So he got the sort of real A-team travel agents on this trip. But it is a sign of how beholden the British political elite is to these big American figures. They are seminal for us. And so it is good news. Look, at the end of the day, it doesn't mean they're going to spend more money on arming Ukraine or doing various other things we want them to do. But the state of the special relationship, if we can still call it that, is quite good.
This is a beautiful country. I just spent the past few days here, actually. Some meetings, some downtime with the family, and we've had a very, very good time here in England. When I say that we are proud of the special relationship, and we are proud to work together with our British friends, God bless you all.
And it's been good for Starmer. He's made good headway with Trump. We've got a better trade deal with them. I don't want to get carried away with any of this. But it was the case when Trump was re-elected, we were talking about, is that sort of the end of the transatlantic alliance, and is the special relationship over? I don't think it is. And the Trump folk, in fairness to them, were saying, we don't think it is. We just think you guys need to shape up. So all of the British political class has actually made a pretty decent fist of accommodating Trump, insinuating themselves with Trump. It can be a bit unseemly at times for people who don't like Trump. But it is necessary given our dependence on America in so many ways. So things are in pretty decent shape in transatlantic terms.
That was Associate Editor of The Sunday Times, Josh Glancy, and you can read all of his reporting and writing at thetimes.com if you've got a subscription, or in glorious print every Sunday. That is it from us today. Today's producer was Olivia Case, with assistance from Shabnam Gruel. The executive producer was Fiona Leach, and sound design and theme composition was by Mal Lassetto. I'm Luke Jones. See you soon.